Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on our podcast, a representative. We're talking with a representative from the organization called March on Harrisburg. It's a Pennsylvania anti-corruption organization. On our podcast, we love to talk with alternative parties as well as nonpartisan election reform organizations. We love to see all the different ways people have to make the system of ours better. So welcome to the podcast, March on Harrisburg.
Thank you. Good to be here.
If we could start by you kindly telling our audience your name and as well as a brief biographical sketch.
Sure thing. I'm Michael Pollack. I live outside of Philadelphia here in Pennsylvania. I've been with March on Harrisburg since we started about 7 years ago or so. I'm a rabbi as well and love making corruption illegal and trying to build democracy here in Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's awesome. I love to hear when people of faith get involved in politics. Unfortunately, I know some people in faith communities who say we should not get involved in politics. It's irrelevant. You just whatever, just pray or chant. You do that, you don't get involved in politics. So I applaud you for doing that.
Absolutely. They're inseparable things in my mind, and if you're going to pursue a better world, and that's the charge of the religious impulse is to pursue a better world and build justice. You can't ignore the world and detach from it in order to do that. So politics is part of that, and you got to dive in.
Perfect. So how did this organization get started, and what is its mission?
March on Harrisburg started back in 2016. There was a group of Pennsylvanians who went on a march alongside others from across the country, from Philadelphia down to D.C., and it was a 140-mile march to get money out of politics and build democracy. And on that march, a bunch of Pennsylvanians, we found each other, and we talked about how we needed to do this at the state level. The state level is where a lot of corruption and democracy legislation is passed. It's we all live under the same federal government, but we obviously have very different laws in our states, and then that's the power of the state. So we got together through the rest of 2016 into 2017 and built March on Harrisburg so that we could, make corruption illegal and build democracy. And our main tactics, what we do is we do a lot of, advocacy, lobbying. We've met with everybody many times over. We do a lot of long-distance marches. We're about to do our fifth march on Harrisburg this September, September 13th to the 15th. We're going from Lancaster to Harrisburg, 36 miles. Beautiful walk, and so that'll be great. And then we do a lot of nonviolent direct action. We force the encounter in really aggressive and intense ways with our elected officials. And we choose to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. We force that encounter and apply nonviolent pressure and not just through direct action, but in many ways. It's not easy to make politicians outlaw their own corruption, so we fight hard to make them do it.
Great. I'm glad I interviewed you. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I have not heard of too many organizations that are political organizations like yours, nonpartisan or partisan, that have such a focus on physical activity along with their political action. So that's interesting.
Yeah, you got to show up. It's a physical activity. You got to be there.
Sure.
History belongs to those who show up. If you're not. Yeah, absolutely. And the marches are really great movement conventions. That's kind of how we think of it. They ramp up pressure on the issue, of course. They draw media attention and whatnot, and they help us organize folks along the march route and build the movement. But really for the people who are marching and who are involved in the march, it really is it's a convention. It's a team building exercise. When you're walking through the countryside of Pennsylvania, you can't be on your phone or else you'll trip. So you got to talk to the person next to you and build that community and build those relationships that are at the center of any movement. Because you only win what you organize. So we gotta organize, and long marches are a good way of doing that. everything we do, we try to do that, build the movement.
Perfect. Do you have to get permits to do that?
For marching, sometimes it depends where you are, whether or not we get a permit or not, and how busy the area is and all of that. For direct actions, never. You don't, we don't tell them where we are. Sometimes we'll get permits for things that aren't what we're about to do, just to kind of, throw folks off. But no, it's permits.
Okay.
If you do a protest, if you do a nonviolent direct action, you can't do a permit, because a nonviolent direct action, you got to be forcing the encounter with the officials, and the officials don't hang out in places where you can get a permit. They spend their time in their offices, at fundraisers, and the campaign headquarters. So they're not hanging out in the rotunda where you can encounter them at a permitted event. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense the way you put it. That's understandable. So for these, can you please describe some of these direct actions? They sound very interesting.
Yeah, the goal is always to kind of swing back and forth between the two poles of our approach, which is the lobbying, the negotiating, and then the direct action, the pressure. And so the goal, what we do is we get our bills moving, and we negotiate as much as we can, we lobby as much as we can, we push them as far as they can, and then, eventually you run into somebody who says, no, we're not going to do that. No, I'm not going to make my own corruption illegal. No, I'm not going to pass this bill that would, not allow me to go to the Super Bowl with lobbyists and whatnot. You, of course, right, that's going to happen. They're going to say no. And so that's when we flip into nonviolent direct action mode, and very much force the encounter in intense ways that elevate the issue and generate pressure. So things we've done in the past have included, from the House gallery, throwing $500 cash down onto the floor to move along the gift ban. That was a protest for the gift ban, which would make it illegal for lobbyists to take public officials to, give them unlimited gifts. Which is currently legal in Pennsylvania. So we were protesting that. And through that action, we got the Speaker of the House to come on board the gift ban and help move it forward a little bit.
Wow. So your direct action it sounds like it works.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Direct action works. When we fight, we win.
Wow. Awesome.
Nonviolent direct action has an incredible track record, and it's been very useful and successful. Every time we've done something, we've seen a tangible, concrete step forward.
Wow. So I take it sometimes you may face arrest for these situations. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So if someone's involved in the organization, there's definitely understanding that that's one of the consequences of the action.
And there's a lot of people in March on Harrisburg who haven't been arrested, and for various reasons, aren't eager to. There's a lot of roles involved in the organization, of course. We do a lot of other things that don't involve arrest. And then during an action itself, most people aren't risking arrest. You have, it's a lot to pull off an action. So you have, a media team, a social media team, a police liaison. You have, your cameras. You have the jail support folks. You have your police liaison, your legal team. So there's a lot of roles that don't involve getting arrested at things.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of our people do, risk arrest and have been arrested multiple times.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like it. So when you get charged with stuff like disorderly conduct, I take it, right?
All sorts of charges: disorderly conduct, criminal trespass. There's something called incommoding, which is a unique legal word that basically means blocking the doorway. And then they usually come in as summary citations or misdemeanors, and then we tend to fight them in court and then win. We're pretty good at court. Oh yeah.
Awesome. That's good. So in regards to the bills themselves, You touched on some of the issues in Pennsylvania that you want to change. Can you please describe more about the specific things you feel wrong with the system there and how you want to change them?
Sure, absolutely. We look at it as kind of two sides of the same coin, where you have the money out and the people in. The anti-corruption laws and then the pro-democracy laws. The laws that make it illegal for people to use money to buy influence, to buy politicians, to buy policies. And then the other side that kind of connects people to their government and that opens up a real line of communication, a real good feedback mechanism where the will of the people becomes the law of the land. So, anti-corruption, pro-democracy, money out, people in. And some of the things, where to start? On the money outside, a few ways that, that are completely legal to bribe a Pennsylvania public official include unlimited campaign contributions. We have zero limits on those. We have no limits on gifts, so lobbyists and anybody who wants to can give unlimited gifts to most of our public officials. We have no limits on side jobs, which is especially a problem for our state legislature, which is a full-time state legislature. Unlike down in Texas, we have a full-time one, and they're still able to legally work side jobs with obvious conflicts of interest. The chair of our Environmental and Energy Resources Committee in the Senate is also a practicing attorney for gas companies. Our old Speaker of the House was a practicing corporate lawyer while he was Speaker of the House. It's absurd. And we also have very little real limits on the revolving door. So when our public officials decide that they've worked hard enough on behalf of special interests, and then they retire as public officials and become lobbyists and end up using public office as a farm system to become lobbyists and get a big raise and, really just lead a better life. You don't have to show up on the ballot anymore or anything. So, we have the revolving door, we have side jobs, we have unlimited campaign contributions, we have unlimited gifts. We also have unlimited dark money swirling around in our system. There's no limits, no real transparency either, so it's just there. So, on the money outside, there's a lot of work to do. We're a very, very, very corrupt state legislature. We're in the bottom of the country on most issues. Yeah. And then on the democracy side, the people inside, we focus on things like ranked choice voting, ending gerrymandering, open primaries, improving access to the ballot, automatic voter registration, same-day registration, early voting. These are all things that we need here in Pennsylvania that we don't have. So they would really open up some space for alternative parties, as well as just make it easier and more secure for people to vote.
Oh, wow. So one question people have about this is how do you get politicians to change when the system benefits them? So if they're receiving money from these lobbyists, what incentive do they have to change? Is it the pressure you put on them to recall them from office? Or what motivates them to change when you're seeking to change legislation?
Right. So you got to understand what they care about and how they think and what their approach is, and then you influence them and you pressure them and you get them to do the right thing, willingly or kicking and screaming, whichever way. So through nonviolence, through forcing that encounter and speaking that truth. You make the power structure, you make them pick a side, right? You make them do the right thing or the wrong thing. And if they do the wrong thing, which they generally do, you just amplify that and then you keep forcing the encounter in creative ways and pushing forward. And then you generate pressure in all sorts of ways, around those actions. You figure out what they care about. A lot of the time, what they care about is not their own reelection. They don't care about that because elections aren't competitive. 91% of state legislative seats weren't competitive last time around, and that's pretty standard. And most of the leaders, the speaker, the majority leader, et cetera, they're in pretty safe districts, and that's for a reason, so that they're not going to get beat back home. So, they don't care about their reelection for the most part. Some of them
Interesting.
care, some of them care statewide if their party wins. Some of them don't. Some of them actually prefer being in the minority. So
Huh.
and also the elections don't really serve as a good accountability tool, because if they do lose and they've, held the line for corruption, they have a lucrative job waiting for them. They're going to
Oh,
go
sure.
become a lobbyist, and they're going to get paid way more money and be much happier with their lives. So they know that. So, you find out what they do care about, and you push. And what they care about may be their reputation, not with the public, but with their colleagues. What they care about may be, a partisan advantage or something, and you play on that. What they care about, every once in a while, they do care about the right thing, but that's extremely rare. That's very, very rare. We hit them in the wallet too. We know that they care about that. So we'll, disrupt their fundraisers. We'll make them spend their campaign money where they would rather not spend their campaign money, and that messes with them. And it costs them their power. So it really comes down to each individual obstruction, how to really deal with them. But you got to figure out what they care about, and then go after them and force the encounter again and again and again until, as Gandhi said, until they either do the right thing or they go home.
Oh, wow.
We've sent a couple home. And by the way, there's been 4 legislators who have obstructed our bills over the years.
Oh, they have
Who
been.
have jumped out in public, and not one of them came back the next session with the same power, and not
Oh,
one of
wow.
them lost the ballot box.
Oh, wow. So they went to your building and they did a counterattack on you.
Say it again?
So you're saying that the legislators, you said they obstructed your building, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's most of what we face. Folks obstructing our bills, and then we churn through those obstructions. So right, we negotiate until you hit a brick wall, and then you use nonviolence to jump through that brick wall, and then you negotiate, you push until you get back to another brick wall, and then you knock it through it with nonviolence.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you just do that until the bill passes. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about money in politics. Do you believe that there should be no money whatsoever, or do you support something like public financing of elections? Is it a matter of the money not being fair, or do you think it would be best to not have any money involved at all?
I mean, you need money involved because to run a campaign costs money. You need
Yes.
flyers, you need literature, you need a basic staff. Depending on if you're running for governor or state rep or whatever, it's different. But you need something. So it's kind of impossible to imagine a world where people are running $0 campaigns, because then they don't even have flyers to hand out. Like, that's not. That's yeah. So we do support public campaign financing. We support the Seattle model, where every voter gets 4 $25 vouchers. That's how they do it in Seattle for
Oh, wow.
city elections. And then voters can give those vouchers to whoever they want, to candidates that are on their ballot. You can't give them to somebody across town who's not on your ballot. You have to give them to people that you can vote for, and they're able to fund campaigns that way. And that means that they don't have to take money from large corporations. And it's really changed the dynamic over the last few years in Seattle, where Amazon, Boeing, Microsoft, they don't own both sides of the table. They only, they're only on their side. They don't own the other side, the city council as well. So it's a really big policy win, and the results of it are huge. Seattle City Council started doing things on behalf of the people. Who would have thunk it that when they went out to campaign, they didn't have to go to fundraisers. They just went to voters, and voters were able to fund them through these vouchers. And so now they represent those voters a lot more. And they've done things like housing rights reform, a domestic workers' bill of rights. They've really accomplished a lot. They started taxing those mega corporations.
Interesting. I have not heard of that in Seattle, that model. That's an interesting model. So for the vouchers, is it something that they physically get and they have to send them to the candidates, or how does that distribution work?
Uh, it's been a while since I've gone through the mechanics of it, but if I remember correctly, it's essentially, you have a physical thing that you get in the mail. You can also get it by email, and it has a serial number type of a setup. And then you have to sign them over. So you have to, put your signature down, and then fill it out, and then it goes, the candidate gets it. You can do it in 10 seconds. It's not like it's not a long form. You're basically just signing your name. You hand it over to the candidate, and the candidate sends over the serial numbers and the signatures to the Secretary of State, which is what it would be in our case in Seattle. I forget which department does it, and then they send you a check to the candidate. So they take your vouchers and they give you back real money, and then you spend that on your campaign. And if billionaires show up to the election with millions of dollars of dark money spending, there's safeguards built into their system where the voucher value increases a little bit, to kind of close the distance. So you have to, in a public campaign financing system, you have to have an answer for that question of what happens when a billionaire shows up and just blows the value of those vouchers out of the water with 10 times more money.
Okay.
So that's what happens.
So are you against PACs altogether?
Are we against PACs altogether? A PAC is just a collection of individual donations, in its essence. We're against the way that they exist currently, absolutely. But the idea of people pooling their vouchers, that makes, that's people's right to do. And people
okay.
Right.
Okay, so given that, because from what I hear, PACs they're a great way to hide donations. So how do you make them more transparent?
You make them transparent. You shine a bright light on it, and you put limits on it. You put limits on what you can spend that money on, so that you can't spend that money on a steak dinner at a golf course, that kind of thing. You put limits on how much people can contribute to the PACs. Some places there are limits for in some places there aren't. In Pennsylvania we have none. And then with super PACs, you shine a bright light on it, and then you ban them. Super PACs are that's just dark money. They have no real reason to exist. A PAC has reason to exist just because, if there's just 1,000 dentists who want to pool their money together and donate it to candidates that support dentists, that's something that 1,000 individual dentists will always just be able to do. You have to have limits on it. You have to have transparency on it. You have to have real safeguards to, on what they're going to spend that money on and all of that. And then a super PAC is just a black hole. They have no reason to exist.
Okay. So how do you tell the difference between a PAC and a super PAC from looking at the organization? What are some signs that you can see that the organization is a super PAC versus a regular PAC?
Yeah, the PACs are registered PACs, and super PACs are kind of just a different beast. The words are confusing. A super PAC tends to be the money goes from the donor to a 501c4 nonprofit, where it's then rinsed clean, and then it goes to a super PAC, and then it gets spent on ads and mailers and all that nasty stuff. So, super PACs generally have a 501c4 involved. That's kind of why they exist, in order to hide that money. A PAC is its own thing.
Okay. So it sounds like a super PAC inherent in the organization is deception.
Yeah, the super PACs didn't exist before Citizens United. Right? Citizens United created super PACs.
Oh,
so
wow.
that corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money, which is their free speech rights, because corporations are people, and people have free speech, and political spending is speech, and that's the logic of Citizens United. Which is, it makes no sense, of course, right? Because corporations are not people. You can't throw a corporation in jail. They don't die. They don't breathe. They don't eat. They're not people. They're corporations. Yeah. And political spending is not the same thing as free speech, because I don't have the right in a courtroom setting to walk up to the judge and hand them an envelope with $1,000 in it, wink at them, and go sit down. Political spending is often bribery, and so you don't have the right to speak with money.
Yeah.
Money shouldn't talk. It does talk, right? We have that phrase, money talks, because it does. That's the reality we live in. But what's supposed to talk is the voice of the people. And
Oh,
when you
sure.
have money that talks, drowns out the voice of the people.
Okay. Those super PACs sound like legalized laundering.
It is, yeah. It's yeah. That's a lot of our system is legalized money laundering.
Oh,
Um,
my.
and that's the whole dark money world. That's why it's called dark money. It's because you can't see where it's coming from. And it gets rinsed
Okay.
clean. It goes through the laundromat, and then it's dark. For example, the most governors in this country use the DGA or the RDA, Democratic Governors Association, or the Republican Governors Association, and those groups exist in this kind of legal area that really exists and allows for them to bring unlimited contributions, including unlimited corporate contributions, wash it clean, and then spit it out to governors and then candidates. All it says on the governor's form is received money from the Democratic Governors Association, and the Democratic Governors Association doesn't need to tell you they get it.
Yeah, it sounds misleading because it sounds like it's the Democratic Party, but it's something else, huh?
Yeah, it's Exxon. It's whoever is spending the money into it. And then that's the principle. And that's how it's set up.
Okay.
It's set up so that money talks and people don't. It's set up so that the guy with the gold makes the rules, not love your neighbor as yourself.
Oh, sure. So, given that some of these things are like Citizens United, that's on the federal level. Can you change the laws at the state level that will make it better, or are you stuck with Citizens United because the Supreme Court made that decision?
No, you're never stuck.
Oh,
You're
good.
never stuck. States have so much power. And everybody, of course, needs to realize that because states have so much power. So when it comes to dark money, there's a lot that states can do. Minnesota and Maine just passed a bill in the last couple of years. They passed it into law that says foreign influenced corporations cannot make political expenditures in their state. And what that means is, Citizens United says corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money in politics. But the door that's left open is foreign entities. And foreign
Okay.
entities are not allowed to spend on U.S. politics. But what they do is that they buy up stakes in U.S. corporations. So, for example, Uber and Lyft both have substantial ownership from the Saudi royal family. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, has multiple stakes in U.S. corporations. They buy up these stakes in U.S. corporations, and it adds up to about 40% of U.S. corporate stock is owned by foreign entities.
Oh,
And
my.
then they use those corporations to then spend money on our elections. So the Saudi
Okay.
royal family is pumping money through Uber into Pittsburgh city elections in order to, further Uber's goals, which are not the goals of Pennsylvania. And so that's able to be shut down, and that closes a lot of Citizens United, right? So there's a lot to be done to close off a whole lot. And then also corruption existed before Citizens United. We have other ways of bribery that are, predate 2010. And we got to close all those down. We have to shut the revolving door. We have to pass a gift ban. We have to get public campaign financing. We have to, ban side jobs. There's a lot to do.
Okay.
Right?
So
We're not one thing away from,
yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. So it sounds like with the foreign thing, it's a matter of finding a chunk of the big parts of corporations in elections and finding a way to, you may not be able to ban it entirely, but to find a subset that you can ban.
Absolutely. And that subset is 98% of the Fortune 500 corporations. So it knocks a lot of them out. It's a pretty good solution. It's not all of it, of course, right? There's more to be done, but it's the best we can do right now at the states. But it's a lot.
Sure.
We don't have to wait on the Supreme Court to overturn Citizens United. We can knock out 98% of it, pretty quickly.
So What do the foreign entities want exactly? I know somewhat what they want, but it was surprising to hear the Norwegians are also into this as well. So what do you think they're seeking through their contributions or their holding of U.S. stocks? What are they desiring?
Um, everybody's involved in this, right? It's everybody does this. I mean, 40% of all stock is owned by 40% of all U.S. stock is owned by foreign entities. So this
Okay.
is, the way that the stock market works, the way the corporate world works is it's global, right? So you have, people in Japan that are 2% owners of, U.S. Steel. Actually, they're about to buy U.S. Steel. So, you have, basically every major corporation, 98% of major corporations have significant foreign ownership of their stock. And
Oh
their
my.
goals vary. Most of their goals are not, national. They're capitals. They're money goals. So,
Okay.
the Saudi royal family, they're not. I mean, at least I don't think that they're, investing in Uber because they have a strong vendetta against U.S. taxi drivers. And I don't know if that crossed their mind, but what they do know is that there's a lot of money to be made in collapsing the taxi industry and replacing them with a much lower wage, non-unionized working group. And there's a lot of
Okay.
profit to be made by doing that. So, of course, they're going to support legislation that, cuts minimum wages and cuts regulations around unionizing and makes it harder to do it. That's their interest in making a profit as Uber and getting the best return on investment they can. So it's not that there's like national, nefarious, military kind of things. It is just money making money. This is just profit seeking
I get it.
profit.
Okay, so it's the foreign are similar to the U.S. interests that they want to make money and they're getting involved in this process because they want to make money. And the United States is there's a lot of money in the United States, so they want to make money from that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just money making money. And the political spending goes with that. If you're a major corporation trying to make more money, have a fatter profit, you're going to buy politicians. I mean, it's the best investment you can make because if you can control the laws, you can do a lot of things. I mean, first of all, you can cut taxes on yourself and raise taxes on everybody else. You can cut regulations that lose you money, that are just hard to do, that you just don't feel like doing. You can use the law to handicap your competition and just give yourself a competitive advantage in a monopoly. And so that's why, big business interests hire government. That's why they invest.
Okay.
It's an investment for them, right? Every major corporation has a team of lobbyists because if they don't, they're missing an opportunity to make more money, a huge one, the biggest one. And then they're also liable to get hurt by their competition because if their competition has a good, lobbying and bribery and corruption approach, they're gonna take over your business. They're gonna legislate you out of existence.
Sure. So I take it that it's generally worth it from a income versus expenses perspective to give money to these organizations, to these politicians, to these PACs. So even though they're spending millions of dollars, they're getting much more back in return, right?
Huge amounts more. It's the best investment anybody can make. Is
Wow.
buying a politician or a party. Because again, if you control the law, that's a lot of power. And so the whole name of the game is using private money to buy public power to pass laws to make you more money. That's the driver of our system. That's what sits at the middle of it. Is how can I use my money to buy public power to pass laws to make me more money? And that's what it is. That's why they do it. That's why they spend all this money on bribes, is because the return is exponentially huge. The return is that you get to exist as a corporate monopoly. You get to do whatever the hell you want to do to make as much money as you can. Who cares if 800 people are dying from poverty? That's irrelevant to your bottom line, so that's not going to be addressed,
Sure. Wow. That makes sense in a dark way.
Yeah, I mean that's our system. It's not good. It's awful. That's why we work to dismantle it and build democracy in its place, where it's one person, one vote instead of $1, one vote. because in a $1 one vote setup, the guys with all the dollars get all the votes.
And since we talk about, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, and then we get laws that benefit the money. That's what sits at the middle of it.
So it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
This is very helpful to our audience because a lot of them are involved in alternative parties in a big sense, and because of these laws, it makes it very difficult for independent and alternative party candidates to get into the system, as our interviewees tell again and again, because they don't have the means to bribe people like these other entities do. So it makes it very difficult. The organizations aren't coming to them to bribe them, and a lot of them, like the Green Party, for example, have provisions in their constitution where they don't accept those donations. So do you think it's ever possible for the two parties to put that in the Constitution like some of the alternative parties do, or do you think that's too much to ask?
Oh, they'll never do that. They're dependent on that. That's why they exist. They're there to take in private money, to buy public power, to pass laws to benefit private money. That's the role of the two major parties, and that's what they do. And the higher you go up, the more true that becomes. And of course, there's exceptions all around, especially at the lower levels. But yeah, third parties, alternative parties, are really unable to compete with the money. Because they don't get it, right? As you said, nobody's coming to try to give a Green Party candidate a $100,000 campaign contribution. And the reason is, number one, the Green Party candidate isn't going to support the policies that the person with $100,000 to give wants them to support, right?
Yeah.
Right out of the get-go, they're going to say, what's your opinion on taxes on rich people? And the Green Party person's going to say, I want them to be higher. And the person who's rich enough to have money to spare is going to say, well, okay, I'm going to go give to somebody else because I think they should be lower. And then, so nobody's trying to buy them because they're not going to accept it, right? As you said, it's in their bylaws. And then also, they don't have any power to sell, right? Nobody's going to try to buy your power if you don't have any power. So if you try to go, buy favor with the Green Party candidate and then they lose with, not even a close race, what have you just done? You've just kind of lit your money on fire. If your goal is to buy influence, you've lit your money on fire. So candidates need to be able to fundraise from a large network of small donors, which is really hard to do. It's very, very hard to do. And then also be able to run those really low budget campaigns where you're not spending that much. You're really, relying on volunteers. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Sure, makes sense. So I remember, sorry, in Austin we have people that need help by the EMS, unfortunately. So I remember in the 80s, the FBI did a sting operation against the politicians, the Congress people, the senators, and they were able to catch most of them willing to take a bribe. There are a few exceptions. There are a few people that would not take the bribe, but most of them did. So is that a good way? Do you ever do stealth things like that where you record people, or is that too hard to set something up because the FBI has more resources?
Yeah, I mean we're not launching sting operations. we're not the FBI. But those things are far fewer and rarer than they used to be. And the reason is that we redefined what a bribe is legally over the years. And so to prove bribery is really, really hard to do. So you do need a sting operation to really prove it. And also prove even if you're wearing a wire and you're the lobbyist wearing a wire, you really got to be specific and lucky in order to actually get the evidence that you need to convict. Because a bribe has been redefined by the U.S. Supreme Court and by other decisions too, to really be so narrow. So what you have to prove is somebody saying, I am taking item X from you in order to do action Y. And the other person needs to say, I am giving you item X in order for you to do action Y. and then item X has to change hands, and then action Y has to come to fruition. It has to happen.
Okay.
And so first of all, most people don't talk that way, right?
Yeah.
Nobody says, I am taking this campaign contribution in order to pass House Bill 276, and I'm going to do that on Thursday. And then on Thursday they pass House Bill 276, and the campaign contribution changes hands. Right?
They wouldn't be
That's
so
not
clumsy, huh?
exactly right. It's like, you know, anybody who's ever seen a mafia movie knows that when you're committing a crime, you don't generally say that you're committing a crime. But that's how we've redefined what a bribe is.
Okay.
And it's absurd. So it's really hard to prove. It still does happen every now and then, which is kind of surprising. But it's really hard to prove. And that came from a U.S. Supreme Court case, McDonnell v. Virginia. He was the governor of Virginia, and he was taking large gifts from an energy drink executive and then using the governor's office to promote the energy drink. You know, he was basically doing marketing for an energy drink.
Oh my.
And the guy was giving him a lot of money. And they weren't able to convict on that. And they set that precedent because McDonnell never said, you know, I'm taking item X to do action Y. Because who said that?
Okay.
And who reports that?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be either very brazen or very stupid to be that upfront about it.
Absolutely. And it still happens. It does happen here and there because they are.
Oh, sure. So it sounds like you're saying they redefined bribery because they watered it down, the definition of what a bribe is, where before a bribe was a bribe, but now it's a lot of things that are a bribe are not called bribes because there's a sleight of hand going on.
Yeah, they just changed what the words mean. A bribe to anybody, you know, and to the dictionary, what it means is giving an item of value to a public official in order to influence them. And in that understanding of what a bribe is, that's 95% of campaign contributions. That's most of the gifts that's all of the gifts associated with lobbying. That's every revolving door job. That's every side job. That's every dark money expenditure. Right?
Okay.
If you go by the dictionary definition of the word, it's our system.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a big indictment.
That's true. It's right there in front of you.
Okay, sure. So if somebody was a politician and let's say they wanted to do the right thing and they didn't want, somehow they got into office in one of the major parties, so what would they have to do, what systems would they have to implement so that they would make sure that they're not getting in the dangerous territory of bribery? So how would they receive donations without them being what we would consider bribes?
Right. We need to build an alternate. So first of all, if you're taking in a whole lot of small dollar donations, those are generally not bribes, right? If you take 10,000 donations of an average of $25 a pop or something, no one of those donors is going to have undue influence over you. You're not going to know the name, you know, all of them, right? But if one person gives you $25,000, then you go, okay, I know who they are, and I feel a sense of gratitude to them. I want to write them a thank you note. Oh, I write them a thank you note, and they respond by saying, you know, I'm a healthcare executive, and we're against this bill that's coming up. And then you go, okay, I get what that means. And what that means is, if you want the next $25,000 check, you're going to, you know, do what he says. And if you don't, then you won't. And then that check will go to somebody who's going to run against you, and they'll use it to beat you and knock you out. Yeah, so it's, you know, the only way to really, there are ways to avoid the pressure, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to jump off in a minute here, but there's ways to avoid the pressure, there's ways to inoculate yourself. You can run very low money campaigns, stay away from the big money. You can, you know, there's all sorts of ways to do it. People find their niche, but overall it's very hard to do, and you're never going to get a majority of a legislative body who can do it. That's why you have to change the laws. You have to change the system, the environment that they exist in.
All right, sounds good. We thank you for coming on the podcast today and talking about all the stuff you talked about. We've had a lot of interviews on this podcast over the time we've been here, yet you've had a lot of new stuff, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and it was a fun time, and yeah, good luck, and thank you.
Good luck to you as well, and all the best in everything you do in life.
Excellent. Thank you. You too. Be well.
Bye now.